In the event of hostilities breaking out between Russia and NATO, tensions escalate quickly, with both sides mobilizing their forces and deploying strategic assets. The scenario unfolds rapidly, revealing a strategic chess match with high stakes and potentially devastating consequences. NATO's immediate response is swift and coordinated. European nations activate their militaries and reserves, while the United States ramps up its own forces, including reserves and National Guard units. A naval task force, comprising U.S. and European vessels, moves toward the Baltic Sea to counter any Russian naval maneuvers. Simultaneously, NATO deploys attack submarines and anti-submarine warfare (ASW) vessels to strategic positions in the Greenland-Iceland-UK gap, crucial for blocking Russian naval access to the Atlantic. The goal is to secure the sea lanes vital for transporting U.S. reinforcements and supplies to Europe. In the Baltic region, specifically Kaliningrad, the conflict intensifies as both sides exchange a barrage of ground-launched cruise missiles and ballistic missiles. NATO leverages its superior firepower advantage, having prepared extensively for such a scenario. Russian missile stocks, already strained due to ongoing engagements in Ukraine and prior resource allocations, face significant depletion. This impacts Russia's ability to effectively engage NATO forces and infrastructure across Eastern Europe, including Poland, Eastern Germany, and the Czech Republic. The situation underscores the critical role of strategic assets such as submarines, which both sides deploy aggressively. NATO intensified efforts to track and neutralize any Russian submarines attempting to breach into the Atlantic, a move that could threaten U.S. logistical support and reinforcement operations. As the conflict escalates beyond the initial exchanges, the outcome remains uncertain. NATO's preparedness and technological superiority give it a significant advantage in conventional warfare, but the unpredictability of modern conflict and the potential for escalation to include cyber warfare, space assets, and unconventional tactics add layers of complexity. Ultimately, the scenario illustrates the precarious balance between preparedness and escalation, highlighting the need for diplomatic efforts to prevent such a catastrophic outcome where possible. In the evolving conflict between Russia and NATO, tensions escalate with both sides engaging in strategic maneuvers and calculated strikes, leading to a complex and volatile military situation. Following initial exchanges of missile strikes in Kaliningrad and the deployment of NATO naval forces to the Baltic Sea, Russia shifts its focus to the Baltic NATO members, Lithuania, Estonia, and Latvia. These countries become the target of concentrated Russian air and ground attacks aimed at disrupting NATO's operational capabilities and defending Russia's western borders. Russia's airstrikes, escorted by MiG fighters, target security fortifications along its borders with the Baltic states. These attacks are followed by precision strikes on military command centers, aiming to degrade NATO's ability to coordinate and respond effectively. Despite NATO's preparedness, the surprising nature of the assault and the lack of timely reinforcement left the Baltics vulnerable. Russian forces swiftly advanced into Lithuania, Estonia, and Latvia, launching separate thrusts toward each nation's capital in an effort to establish control before NATO could mount a counteroffensive. In response, NATO faces a critical challenge in defending its Baltic members, a region long seen as vulnerable in any conflict with Russia due to its proximity and strategic importance. While NATO forces mobilize and prepare to repel the Russian advance, the situation remains tense and uncertain. The alliance's newest member, potentially Finland, hesitates to join the conflict, wary of further escalating tensions with Russia. Recognizing the risk of overextension and the potential for NATO to exploit additional fronts, Russian President Vladimir Putin decides against opening a new front near the Finnish border. Instead, Russian troops dig in defensively, aiming to consolidate gains in the Baltics while avoiding further escalation that could strain military resources and jeopardize Russia's broader strategic position. The scenario underscores the delicate balance of power and the high stakes involved in modern warfare between major powers. Both sides maneuver carefully, weighing strategic gains against the risks of escalation and broader international consequences. As the conflict unfolds, the outcome remains uncertain, with NATO striving to regain initiative in the Baltics, while Russia consolidates its gains and maintains a defensive posture elsewhere. In this tense military standoff, diplomatic efforts and strategic calculations play a crucial role in shaping the course of events, highlighting the importance of international diplomacy and conflict resolution in averting further escalation and preserving regional stability. In the midst of escalating tensions between Russia and NATO, the conflict dynamics shift across different fronts, with each side calculating its moves carefully amidst the volatile military landscape. As the Russian assault intensifies in the Baltics, NATO faces significant challenges in mounting an effective defense. Russia's initial momentum, driven by concentrated air and ground attacks, aims to swiftly gain control over Lithuania, Estonia, and Latvia. Despite NATO's attempts to slow the advance through daring carrier raids and the activation of its rapid response force, Russian forces continue to press towards the Baltic capitals. The situation highlights the stark numerical advantage Russia holds in troop numbers. Although many of these troops are fatigued from prior engagements and lack the training and equipment standards of their NATO counterparts, NATO's strategy shifts towards an air campaign aimed at dismantling Russian air defenses, radar installations, and command nodes. However, progress is slow due to the formidable nature of Russia's air defense network. Wild Weasel combat aircraft, specialized for suppression of enemy air defenses, led daring missions to neutralize Russian radar and anti-aircraft batteries, critical for paving the way for broader NATO air operations. This tactical approach underscores NATO's technological edge and strategic acumen, aiming to establish air superiority crucial for subsequent operations. In the wider geopolitical context, Sweden, positioned at a distance from immediate conflict zones, aligns itself firmly with NATO, despite not being a formal member. Sweden leverages its navy to hunt down Russian submarines, recognizing the pivotal role of maritime security amidst the ongoing hostilities. This proactive stance illustrates Sweden's strategic calculus in the face of regional instability and its alignment with Western interests. Meanwhile, Russia's strategic decisions focus on consolidating gains in the Baltics while avoiding overextension. The decision to maintain a token defensive force along other potential fronts, such as the northern border near Finland, reflects a cautious approach aimed at preserving military resources and strategic flexibility. The conflict's outcome remains uncertain, with NATO grappling with logistical challenges and reinforcing Baltic defenses amidst ongoing Russian assaults on key ports. The prolonged timeline required to mobilize substantial firepower to counter Russian advances underscores the strategic advantage Russia currently holds in the region. As both sides maneuver and adjust their strategies, the conflict evolves into a high-stakes military and diplomatic standoff. The implications of further escalation weigh heavily, highlighting the critical role of international diplomacy in mitigating tensions and preserving regional stability amidst the intensifying crisis. In the escalating conflict between NATO and Russia, Turkey takes a leading role in launching air and naval operations aimed at crippling the Russian Black Sea Fleet and targeting Russian positions in Crimea. Meanwhile, NATO forces prepare for a concerted push into Ukraine, coordinating with Ukrainian defenders to advance east and south towards Crimea. Despite Russia's direct invasion of NATO territory, NATO leadership unanimously agrees to refrain from pushing into Russian territory to avoid escalating to nuclear conflict. Simultaneously, NATO special forces embark on a sabotage campaign inside Russia, mirroring tactics seen in Ukraine. They sabotage railway infrastructure, destroy tracks, and target industrial and commercial facilities critical to Russia's war effort. Employing guerrilla tactics, NATO special forces strike swiftly and then blend back into civilian populations. In response, Russia attempts its own sabotage operations, but its efforts are severely limited due to ongoing engagements in Ukraine. NATO gains air superiority across Russia's western flank, significantly weakening Russian air defenses. In Kaliningrad, NATO forces led by Germany launched a successful offensive that decimated Russian defenses. Utilizing advanced weaponry like smart cluster munitions, NATO aircraft delivered devastating blows to Russian forces, surpassing the destructive capability seen in past conflicts. Despite significant losses, NATO mitigated casualties with advanced stealth aircraft such as the F-35, which led the air campaign by infiltrating and neutralizing Russian air defense networks. The challenge lies in overcoming Russia's extensive ground-based air defenses, necessitating a methodical approach to eliminate each one, thereby slowing NATO's ground offensive. NATO demonstrates superiority in doctrine, tactics, and equipment on both the Ukrainian and Baltic fronts. Russian forces, spread thin and facing superior technological capabilities, suffer heavier losses than their Ukrainian counterparts. Russia resorts to mass deployments of conscripts to defend strategic positions, employing defensive strategies reminiscent of those used in Ukraine. However, facing the world's most technologically advanced air forces, Russia struggles as American Wild Weasel aircraft systematically dismantle air defenses, enabling Allied aircraft to target Russian artillery positions with precision. In combat, NATO bombers unleash precision artillery and special munitions, devastating Russian troops entrenched in trenches. Ground forces, including British Challengers and European Leopards, swiftly followed, engaging Russian defenses with unmatched precision and firepower. Any attempts by Russian tanks to challenge NATO armor are swiftly met with counterattacks from attack helicopters and ground attack aircraft, or neutralized by European tanks equipped with superior range, precision, and sensor capabilities. Ultimately, NATO's combined arms warfare approach proves effective where Russia's attempts in Ukraine failed, underscoring NATO's strategic advantage and technological supremacy in the conflict. As the conflict between NATO and Russia intensifies, NATO faces significant challenges, primarily due to manpower limitations. Despite initial military defeats when facing NATO forces, Russia's preparation and larger, more combat-ready ground forces provide an advantage. NATO struggles with logistical issues, requiring time to mobilize forces and sort out supply chain problems, especially evident in countries like Germany. The United States, meanwhile, needs to transport its substantial firepower across the Atlantic. By the second month of fighting, the balance begins to shift as the U.S. Army and Marines reinforce weary European NATO forces. Unlike Russia, NATO can rotate its troops, allowing them to rest and recuperate, which is crucial in sustaining prolonged combat effectiveness. Under relentless NATO combined arms warfare, Russian morale deteriorates rapidly. Similar to past conflicts like Desert Storm, Russian forces find themselves under simultaneous attacks across multiple domains. NATO's electronic warfare disrupts communication networks, while deep strike operations target command centers and vehicles attempting to relay orders. Precision airstrikes and artillery barrages cripple armored units on the front lines, while infantry and attack helicopters exploit weaknesses in Russian defenses with swift and decisive maneuvers. The disruption of command networks leaves Russian forces unable to make independent decisions effectively, compounded by NATO's overwhelming air supremacy, which makes massing troops for offensive actions extremely risky. Russia's strategy pivots to a defensive stance, hoping to wear down NATO forces and erode public support in Western nations weary of casualties. Despite NATO's military superiority, Russia maintains an advantage in its population's resilience and willingness to endure high casualties, shaped by years of ideological preparation under Vladimir Putin's leadership. Russia's prospects for victory are bleak, especially after significant losses in Ukraine decimated its best forces. However, if Western populations grow hesitant and withdraw support due to mounting casualties, Russia might negotiate a favorable peace deal despite the inevitable defeat against NATO's formidable might. While NATO possesses unparalleled military capabilities, the war's outcome hinges not only on battlefield successes, but also on the endurance and resolve of civilian populations supporting the conflict, highlighting the delicate balance between military strength and public opinion in prolonged conflicts. Hit that like button for updates, and thanks for watching this video.